Hi everyone, Savannah here, and today's sketch is inspired by golden hour on a quiet rooftop. We're drawing warm string lights, a dusky sky, and cozy summer vibes. You can download the color palette and outline for free on Patreon, and I'm also using my free Procreate brush set as well, all of which are linked down below. Let's go ahead and jump in. First thing we're doing is changing that background, so go to layers, select background color, and it will pull up the color palettes. Scroll until you find that rooftop deck and grab this brown color. Then we're going to create a new layer, bring that layer below the outline layer that I provided, and go ahead and scroll up in the brush set to the square blend brush. We're going to grab that medium brown color, and we're just going to start adding in some color here and there, from the almost to the top all the way down to the bottom. I'm just kind of doing rough sketch here. I'm not going too perfect with this. I want to be a little bit more loose, and with the square blend brush, you can blend it out as you go. As you can see, I'm adding in a little bit of dark color as I go further down, and then just lightly pressing on the Apple Pencil to blend it a little bit more up on top. And then I grab that darker orangish color, and I'm going even further down here. So I want to go light all the way down to this dark color. So we start with that lighter brown color at the top. Then we pick this a little bit more pigmented orangey brown color, and now we're going towards the bottom with that red orange color. And I'm just alternating between these colors to blend them out a little bit. Still want it to be a little bit chunky looking, and so I'm not perfectly blending these colors out. If you do want to perfectly blend them out, you can. You can use this brush, you can use the circle blend brush, or you can even do a Gaussian blur on it as well. That's going to make it really blended out, but I like it to have a little bit of texture here. Now create a new layer. This is going to be above that background we just created. Grab that cyan color, and I'm actually going to use the circle dark brush here because I want to give a little bit of variation with the coloring here. And we're going to fill in the cityscape in the background. So again, just using that circle dark brush. I'm just going along the edge here. I'm not making it perfect. I will turn the outline layer off here in a second just to make sure that the buildings are looking a little accurate for me, but this is going to be in the background, so I don't want this to be too detailed. It's very minimal. This is not the main focus of the scene. The main focus is going to be the buildings in the front that you can see in the bottom left, the final image, what that looks like, and then also in this outline layer. But we're just going to go and fill in with this soft kind of blue color, the cyan color, and then we'll add a few lights. Again, not going very detailed with this backdrop because this is not the focal point, but we're just going to go in and add in the color, and you're going to color all the way down. So this is going to go towards the bottom of the screen in between those two buildings. So you can go down between those two buildings. You can turn the outline layer and see where that is going to be, um, kind of where you need to place that, but you don't have to go all the way behind the buildings because it's going to be covered by the buildings. Just go down enough so that when we are working on the buildings, there's none of that background kind of peeking through from the very bottom layer. It's the blue buildings that we see here. And you'll notice that a lot of my brush strokes are vertical. I'm not really going horizontal with this because the brush that I'm using, the circle dark brush, it's going to pull in multiple variations of this color and go a little bit more darker in that tone. And I don't want horizontal lines for that. So I want to keep it vertical because it'll make the building kind of look tall and give it more interest. I didn't like the horizontal lines, so that's why I'm going up and down. If you want to do horizontal, you can. I'll do it around like the top of the buildings because it's a little bit easier, but I just like the vertical lines better. And now select that layer and set it to alpha lock and grab that yellow color that's next to the cyan. And we're gonna use the square light brush for this. We're gonna add in the windows on this building. So I'm using the square light brush mainly because the shape of it is most similar to windows, but then also the light is going to similar to how we use that the dark version of the round brush. It's going to pull in light colors here. So with the dark brush, it pulled in that color that we have selected plus darker shades of that color. With this light brush, it's going to pull in that color that we've selected plus lighter version. So it's going to give it a little bit of contrast, a little bit of dimension here. It's not too much. It's just a very subtle difference. But I wanted to go more light with that color versus dark because these are windows that are lit up. And I'm just kind of varying the direction that I'm doing these windows. So you'll see that I do a little bit more horizontal lines here. I'm doing some vertical lines. I'm just kind of placing windows here and there, based off of what it looks like, how I want it to look like. And I'm just going to keep filling in windows here. And then once I have enough and I'm liking what it's looking like, then we can move on to the buildings in the foreground that we are, is more the focal point of this image. And feel free to do as many or as little lights as you want on these buildings. I did avoid the windows in between where the front buildings are going to be because I didn't want to distract from those buildings. But if you want to add windows there, you definitely can. And now that we have those windows in, let's go ahead and add a new layer, and we're going to work on the buildings in the front. So I'm going to use the dark cyan color. I am going to use a square brush for this. And I'm going to outline and fill in the shape. And I'm going to put both of these buildings on the same layer because they're not overlapping. So as we're adding in details, they won't overlap. So you can do all the details on the one layer if you want to. But actually for this one, and usually I do details and layers on the same layer. But this one I am going to do some clippy masks because there's a little bit more detail, a little bit more, um, a couple more things here that I didn't really want to do all on the same layer. And so I do clippy masks for some of these layers, and I'll show you what I mean by that. But for now, just go ahead and trace the two buildings with that same color. You can use the same color for both and fill in those colors. And make sure as you're going through this, as you're filling in the colors, that you're turning off that outline layer so that you can see if your lines are looking how you want them to look. Especially with these straight lines, you want to make sure that they look semi-straight. It doesn't have to be perfectly straight if you don't want to. If you do want it to be straight, you can drag the line across the screen with your pencil held down, hold it there for a second, and it'll snap that line to a perfectly straight line, and you can kind of drag it up and down to where you want to place it. But it's good to have the outline layer off so that you can see how your objects are looking. Now set this layer to alpha lock. We're going to grab that dark red orange color, and we're going to do the square blend brush for this. I'm going to add some texture and details to the front of this building. Very rough, similar to how I did the background sky. I'm just adding these kind of vertical and horizontal lines on the surface of the building here. This is all on the same layer. Because these are set to alpha lock. When you are doing this color, it's not going to go outside of the lines, which is fantastic. But we're doing all of this on the same layer because it kind of blends that dark cyan color out. Then I'm just picking up that dark color again, just blending them a little bit more across those two colors. I'm going to grab a little bit of this lighter color here as well. It's not too much of a lighter color, so if you want to go even lighter, you can click into disc like I'm doing here and go a little bit lighter. I wanted a little bit more variation than what I originally had in the color palette. So if you want to stick with the color palette, you definitely can. If you want to go lighter, you can. Or if you just want to keep the two color original ones, the dark cyan and the red orange, you can do that as well. But I like how this is kind of coming together with these colors. Again, just kind of blend it out until you get the size that you, or the colors that you want here. And then I'm going to start adding in some brick lines here. So I grab that dark cyan color here, and I'm very lightly drawing these horizontal lines across the front of the building. I'm not going across the whole way. I'm just adding them here and there because I want to give the impression that this is a brick building without having to do every single brick detail here. So just draw these horizontal lines across certain places. So if you're trying to do this dark cyan on a dark cyan area, it's not going to show. So stick to areas where you have a little bit more of that red orange color or this lighter cyan color with those horizontal lines. And then just very lightly, again, we're just doing light pressure on this Apple Pencil, very lightly go in and add those brick details. So I'm not doing too many. I'm just going very lightly to give that impression that this is a brick building. You will, once you look at this, you'll see that, oh, this is a, your mind plays that trick, right? Where it's like, this is a brick building because you see that pattern there. You don't have to do every detail. No, if you want to do every detail, you definitely can, but it is also very time consuming. So that's why I'm just kind of doing a little bit of placement. I like the building on the right. It looks like it's a brick building to me. So now I'm going to do the same thing on that building to the left. And because we did this brick building detail, this is why I do separate layers and use clipping mask as we're building up these details, because I didn't want to mess up that brick that we just created. So that's why I didn't do that. But I am going to grab a darker color and I'm going to start adding in shadow to the detail here on top of this building on the right, because we don't have that detail on the left building. We don't have to worry about that. But for this one, I'm just grabbing a darker version of that cyan color. I'm just tracing the lines here that we have here, and I'm not going to do too much detail outside of this. It's really just going to be tracing these lines just to give a little bit more detail to this building. Now, with this detail done, we're going to create a new layer and we're going to start tracing the shape of the window. So set that layer to clipping mask so it's all contained within the shape that we have here. And with that same color selected that we used for the detail on the top of this building to the right, we're going to outline the sides here of the windows, as you can see, and then that horizontal line. We will add the upper and lower part of the window here with a slightly different color. But for now, we're going to do these dark, almost black, but this really dark cyan color for the sides and horizontal bar of this window. And now you can do the same thing on the windows to the left. Focus on the sides here and then that middle bar and the crossbar with it as well. And you may notice that I'm making the lines on the windows to the left a little bit thicker. I didn't change the brush size, but I'm just doing a few lines next to each other to make it wider. The reason I made the windows to the left wider is because either it's a different building and the windows look different, but also because I want that building to appear closer to the viewer than the building to the right. So that's why I made the windows a little bit thicker, because they're not further away like the windows on the right side. And we will add the lighting behind these windows here in a little bit. For now, we're just doing the general shape, and then we'll add the lighting behind it. And then for the building on the right, we'll do that. We'll add some curtains to it, and then we're pretty much done with that building on the right. And then the building on the left, we have the decks there and the plants we want to do. Now, for the windows on the right side, I grabbed this dark red orange color and the square brush all on the same layer. I'm just adding in that color here. Now we will add some color variation. They're not just going to be red ledges on the windows, but we are just going to start with the red color here. And then I used the one of the cyan colors for the top part of the window. But for now, just go ahead and use the red. Just draw the horizontal bar here at the bottom. I turned the outline layer off because my lines weren't exactly matching up with the outline layer. So if I tried to do these based off of that outline layer, there wasn't going to be a little bit of that overlap that I need. And so I just turned the outline layer off, did the horizontal bars just outside of that. So with, like I mentioned earlier, we're doing the dark cyan color for the upper part of these windows, the red orange for the bottom. But again, we're going to blend those colors out with each other here in a minute. So it's not going to just be this red orange color or the cyan color. And I did end up using the red orange for the top of the windows at the bottom. So I'm just going to go over that with the cyan color just so that they're all consistent and the same. Now grabbing that dark red orange color and the square blend brush, I'm just very lightly going over the top of the windows here, just again to give it a little bit more variation, to kind of blend in more with the brick that we have on the side of the wall. I wanted to kind of blend with that as if we're still using the same material, but I want them to be a little bit more of a pop. So that's why I did the cyan for the top and then the red orange for the bottom, because I wanted the cyan to be more dominant as a color in the top and that red to be more dominant in the bottom. And then you can grab the dark cyan color to do kind of a shadow effect on the bottom side of all of these here. And now we have the windows on the right complete. Let's go ahead and add some light. So click into the building layer and add a new layer above that. That's going to automatically set it to clipping mask because it's below the clipping mask of these windows that we created, but above the building layer. So that will automatically set it to clipping mask. If it doesn't, just go ahead and set it to clipping mask. And then grab one of those orange colors that I have underneath the colors that we used for the building and just fill in the inside of these windows here, and then we'll set that to alpha lock. We'll add some details to this, to the windows. Like I mentioned, we'll add some curtains and things like that to give it a little bit more of um, more character, like people are actually living in these buildings, and then we'll move on to the building to the left. And if you make a mistake like I did just there, just tap the screen with 2 fingers. That will undo it. If you accidentally, I do this all the time, but if you accidentally go across your screen and it thinks that you did 2 fingers, it will undo it and you don't want it to, just touch a screen with 3 fingers and that will redo it. Now with those windows done, we're setting this to alpha lock. We're going to grab that dark cyan color and then we're going to grab one of the blend brushes. I'm going to use a square blend brush for this and I'm going to add in the curtains here, and I'm using the square blend brush because it's going to bring in a lot of that yellow light pigment coming through. Now it is pressure sensitive as I mentioned earlier, so I am going to pull in some darker color to make it look like there are curtains that kind of are um, billowed up next to each other. So that's why I'm kind of pressing harder in certain areas and then lighter in others. But have fun, play around with the curtains. You don't have to have them all be the same. So I'm doing horizontal ones like they're blinds that are coming down that you pull down, or curtains, or just any types that you want to do here. I purposefully kept the windows a little bit more plain. I didn't add too many details into them because I try to keep these videos under an hour if I can, under 30 minutes, because I know sometimes you just don't have the time to do all the details. So I'm trying to keep these videos pretty simplistic so that you can have a chance to just get some time in, draw if you haven't drawn in a while, or if you're learning or trying to pick things up. I have 2 little children that are always wanting me around, and so sometimes I don't always have the time to draw. And so that's why I try to keep these somewhat short, so that you have that time. You can kind of carve out 30 minutes, an hour if you're able to draw something on your iPad and hopefully learn something new here. Now on that layer that we did the windows, the black part here of the windows here, we're going to start doing the top of the windows on the left. So I grabbed that red orange color, similar to how we did the windows on the right. I'm just going to trace and fill in. Now again, this building is a little bit closer, so there's a little bit, just a little bit more detail on the upper part of the window here. So I'm just tracing and filling that in, and then we'll work on adding in some of the other colors and details here in a little bit. But let's go ahead and fill that in on that same layer, and then we'll move on to the next step here. And now we're going to do the railing for the different decks here on the left side. So I'm going to grab an almost black color. I'm going to grab that square brush and then I'm going to trace the decks here, or the railings here for the decks. Now I did originally was going to put this on the same layer as the window, but I ended up doing a new layer. Part of it is because the window layer I set to clipping mask and I don't want it to be set to clipping mask for the deck because it needs to go outside of the building layer. So make sure that it's not set to clipping mask. And we're going to just, again, trace the shape of the railing here. I did thicker lines for the top and the bottom of the railing and also the corner piece on the right here. And then I made the size a little bit smaller in the brush for the horizontal bars and also the railing that kind of tucks back around the corner of the building here. And I'll show you what I mean when I get to that point. But for now, I just did thicker lines for the top and bottom and then this corner piece here. And now this is where I turned the brush size down. So that's going to be the slider on the top left here. I brought the brush size down to make the rails, the vertical rails, a little bit smaller. I didn't go too small with it because I still want a lot of that detail to be in there, but I want them smaller than the top and bottom part of the deck here. And I end up using the same size for that railing that tucks around to the side here. So imagine that the railing or the deck kind of wraps around the corner. That's what I did with these buildings. And so that's why I made that a little bit smaller in size, because that is going further away from the eye. And so it'd be smaller to the eye as it's further away. So that's why I went a little bit smaller with that size there. And then same thing on the bottom, just fill in those vertical lines here with that same size. And you'll notice that I've been using that trick here in the Procreate where I draw that straight line, I wait for it to snap into an actual straight line, and then I'll move it left or right depending on where I want that vertical line to end up. Now let's go ahead and add a new layer above the layer with the windows, but below the railing layer. We're going to grab that dark red orange color and we're going to fill in the bottom of the deck here. So I use a dark red orange color for this. You don't want this layer also to be set to clipping mask because it won't go outside the confines of the building here. So make sure that that is also not set to clipping mask, just like the deck or the railing of the deck. And we're just going to fill this color in. We'll give it a little bit of dimension here, but not too much. And then with the underside here of the deck above, grab a slightly darker version of that color. And we're going to, again, trace and fill in the underside here of the deck with this slightly darker red-orange color. And now with these areas done, let's go ahead and add the light behind the windows on the left side. So I did this on a separate layer. You could do it on the same layer as the windows to the right, but I just went ahead and made a new layer above that. The light from the windows on the right side, similar to what we did on the right. Grab that yellow color, the square brush, and then you're going to just fill in the inside here of the windows with that light yellow color. And once we get done with this, we're going to do the same thing that we did to the windows on the right side. So we'll set these windows to alpha lock. We'll grab that dark cyan color to do the curtains and blinds here, and then that square blend brush, and we'll add in some details on the inside of the windows. Again, if you want to add more details, maybe you want to draw somebody standing in the window and it's a silhouette of them. Maybe you want to add plants on the inside of the building. Maybe you want to do something completely different. You can definitely do that, but we're keeping it simplistic in this video. So I'm just grabbing that dark cyan color, grabbing that square blend brush. I'm adding in some blinds here, blinds here for the windows. And then I just have these kind of handles coming down for like the curtains to pull them up and down. So I'm grabbing the circle brush. I grabbed that almost black color. I'm just going to add those details here, just making sure that the size is not as thick. It was a little bit thicker for my liking, so I want them to be a little bit more on the thin side. But I'm going to just add those details in here, and then we'll go on to the next step. Now we have the windows complete. I'm gonna touch up the window part above so that red orange color. I'm gonna add some cyan to it again, similar to what we did to the technique on the windows on the right side. I'm gonna just grab a little bit of the cyan and the square blend brush and blend in some of this other color. So make sure that layer with that red orange color is set to alpha lock, because otherwise it'll go outside those lines and we don't want that to happen. But I'm just going to add in just a little bit of variation with the cyan color here and that red orange, again similar to what we did to the right side here. And then I'm going to do some texture on the flooring here of the deck on the left. So I'm actually going to grab a little bit of this orange color that's right under that dark red orange color, set that layer to alpha lock, and I'm just going to add a little bit of variation, still using the square blend brush for this, but I'm just adding a little bit of texture so it's not just one solid color. Now with a new layer above the floor layer here of the deck, I'm going to grab that light brownish color, same color we used for the sky, and that circle brush. I'm just going to trace and fill in the shape of the pots here. I'm doing it all in the same color for now, but we will add a little bit of color variation. And I didn't do too many details on these pots because again, the main focus of this image I want is to be the buildings, and so I didn't want to go super detailed on these pots, so I kept them pretty simple. But again, feel free to go a little bit more detailed if you want to. But for now, we're just going to do this one color and then we'll add in some color variation. We'll add in the plants and we have a few more things to do before we're done with this image. And now set that layer to alpha lock, and I'll show you on this one planter what I did. But I just grabbed one of the colors. I used brown for this one. I grabbed the circle blend brush and I just added a little bit of detail to the surface of this pot here. I didn't do too many details, but I'll skip ahead and show you what I did with the plants here. You can do the same technique on those other planters with the other colors in the color palette. Now on a new layer underneath the planters here, we're going to grab that dark green color, and I'm going to keep the circle blend brush because I want a little bit of color coming through from behind these plants. And I'm just going to start adding in the shape here. Now, one thing I noticed as I was adding in the darker green colors, it was a little too much blending in with the building, and so I will pull in a couple different colors from the color wheel instead of just using this one green color that works. But just keep that in mind. If you want to pull in other colors, please feel free to do so. It got a little bit darker on the building than I probably originally anticipated, and so that dark green color doesn't really pop against it. So we want colors that will pop against it to give it a little bit of interest. So that one green color works really well. If you do that as a layer and then go on top with the darker green like I'm doing here, then that works as well. But if you're just going to do that dark green up against that building, it's going to be hard to see that color. So just add in some plants here. You can mess around with it. You can do, so I used the circle light brush. I did the blend brush. You can use any of the brushes here to add these plants in. You can do any plant you want. You can do flowers if you want. I just did greenery because again, I wanted it to kind of be simplistic, but also I think green up against this looks really well. But I'm just adding in different colors of green here using that circle blend brush to kind of blend these colors out a little bit. But we're going to keep adding in this greenery here, and then we'll be pretty close to being done with this image. And again, you don't have to go super complex with these plants unless you want to. That's absolutely fine. But I'm just adding in color here, doing a little bit of color variation, blending it out. I just wanted a little bit of a pop of color here on the decks and also to make it look like somebody is actually living in these buildings. And now on a new layer right above the plant layer that we just completed, grab a dark blackish color, the circle brush, and we're just going to do the ladder that goes from the two different decks. And with that same color on the same layer, you can also do the string that the lights are going to be hanging off of. So I have 3 strings here. You can do more if you want to. You can do less, or you can complete the image here now if you want. But once that's complete, we're going to do a new layer above all the other layers here. And we're going to do the string of lights. So I did grab a slightly lighter yellow color than what's in the color palette. Using that circle brush, I'm just doing circles along the lines that we just created for the string of lights. And then I'll show you a couple things I did to make them look brighter. We used a blend mode, some Gaussian blur and things like that. So I'll show you once you add in all of the lights here, what we do to make it look like they're actually lights. And once we're done with this layer, we're going to end up duplicating it and doing a few things to this to make these look glowy. So again, go to layers, duplicate it. On that bottom layer, we're going to set it to a Gaussian blur. So go to adjustments, click Gaussian blur, and swipe to the right. Then we're going to do a different blend mode for the original layer, that top layer. So click that N on that layer. I end up using add as my blend mode for this, but you can use screen, you can use lighten. I really like add, and so that's what I did here. And then I did a duplicate on this layer and I set it to alpha lock, grabbed a white color, and then went back to that layer and clicked fill layer, and then turned off alpha lock. And then I changed the blend mode for this one to lighten, or to screen, and then I did a Gaussian blur. So that kind of gives it a little bit more of a glowy look that I wanted to go for these lights. And with that, our image is complete. Thank you so much for following along. If you enjoyed this video, please feel free to like and also subscribe if you want other beginner-friendly videos just like this. Everything you need to follow along is linked in that description down below, and I'll see you all in that next video.